Hey, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Indie New Year's Book Blitz, what I'm going to have to get used to saying over all these panels. Kicking us off with the very first panel of this year's Blitz, we have epic Noblebright fantasy authors. We have Andrew on, Melinda is on, Claudia is on, Amina is on, and Cyrus is on. Welcome, everybody. So glad to have you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's my pleasure. Hey, JCM. Good to see you on this morning. Yeah, if you're joining us live, feel free to drop questions, comments, good mornings for wherever you are, or good evenings if you're on the other side of the world, and we will pull them up and work through them. That's why we do these live. So if you're watching live, you're not watching the recording, you can ask us whatever you want, and we'll do our best to answer. But for those who don't know who everybody is, hey, John, why don't we go around and talk just very briefly about who we are, what kind of fantasy we write specifically, and maybe one series that you feel like you're the most known for. Cyrus, you want to kick us off, and then we'll just sort of go around the window?
Making me take one for the team, huh?
Absolutely. If you're all good starting.
All right. My name's Cyrus Welchel. I'm right now a indie author from Texas, and so far the only book that I've got published right now is my debut novel, the first book of my Fallman War Chronicles trilogy, Oaths of Life and Death. I actually just finished the first draft of book 2 the other day, so hopefully I'll be looking to get that one out there in the world sometime in, I'd say, late summer, early fall.
Congratulations. So that's book 2 of how many planned, or do you know at this point?
It's going to be a trilogy. I've already got book 3 outlined. I'm probably going to start work on that in late fall or winter, because for the mid part of the year, I want to focus on doing my standalone novel.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for being here. This is Cyrus's first panel on the channel. I know that if you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably remember Melinda and Amina and Andrew from previous chat channels. See, this is too early. I should have done the coffee like you, Andrew. I'm just gonna say, okay, no cat, no coffee. Amina, do you want to sort of introduce yourself and what you write?
Yes. So thanks for giving me the space for an introduction, Katherine. So my name's Amina Jamali, and I write epic Noblebright fantasy. Like, obviously, that's the title of the panel. My books combine an emphasis on faith, particularly diverse faith that's drawn from elements of my culture, feminism. So my characters are, many of them, very strong, powerful women, and a lot of science-based magic. And all of this goes together and is sort of just this story about the beauty and the heartbreak of the struggle between good and evil. And I'm from Texas. I forgot to say that. So I'm from Texas. I always forget to say that. And the series, so these are my books in general. And my first series is the Lord of Freedom series. This is my debut book, The Bell Tolling. I've currently published 2 others in the series, but they're not book 2 and 3. They're like the prequel, the complement. And I'm almost done with book 2, and I hope to publish that this spring, if I can manage it. And
Yay. It seems like you just put book 1 out. So yes. You've been going so fast with book 2.
Yeah, I published book 1 in 2021. So
wow.
Book 2 has been, it feels like it's been taking forever, but I think, like, with the scope of the project and how much I'm trying to put in there, it's probably proceeding at a decent pace.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to book 2. I can't believe it's been a couple years since then. When I was typing this up, I'm like, the Blitz 2023, 2024. Wait a minute. It cannot be 2024 yet. Oh, we have Rachel on too. Good morning. Oh, not Rachel. Rahel, I'm sorry. Claudia, good to have you on. This is your first panel with us as well. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your books?
Okay, so I'm Claudia Klein, and I am an specifically young adult indie author. I found out about the indie author community after about 6 years of trying to break into traditional publishing and not getting much information besides like sort of figuring out how to write a query letter to an agent. So I found out about the indie author world 2016, and I published my debut novel in 2019, The Air. And I have published the sequels, The Crown, and The Wizard. This one came out in August this year, and that is a complete trilogy. And what the books are about, I like to write kind of about good versus evil, which is why I choose Noblebright versus dark fantasy. Um, and I like to write about like there's an evil overlord, and the royalty of the world has to save the day because I like to write about the royalty in my books. So my world is based a lot off of medieval Europe. I modeled the 5 countries in my world kind of after medieval countries in European time and really focused more on historical fantasy. So it's pretty cool.
I love it. And I love that even though we're all writing epic, we're all writing Noblebright, there's so many different flavors of it already. Just 3 people in. This is going to be a really exciting panel. Um, Melinda, welcome back. You came
Thank
on
you.
and you were brave enough to read part of your one of your books for us live and made me go buy it and put it on my TBR list. And now I finished it since the last panel, and I'm just like, I want more from this world. But for
There's a
those who
lot
haven't gotten
more.
there, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and the addictive books you're writing?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That feels good to hear that. Spending a lot of time writing, and like you start doubting whether like anybody wants to read it. Even after you've published 20 books, you're still like, is anybody going to want to read this? So I'm glad to come out of the writing cave and join you guys today on the panel. So I'm Melinda Cusera, and I write epic fantasy adventures, but the fun kind. Like we chase dragons, dragons chase us. We go running around fighting monsters. I particularly like writing about like families. So the series that Catherine's talking about is the Cursebreaker series, which would be this guy, which stars our Cursebreaker Enchanted, which is he's a single father raising a very precocious little boy. He's also a mage. Magic is illegal, and his son wants to be his sidekick, and it is just mayhem. There's currently 10 books published in the series, and hopefully 2 more coming this year, characters permitting. They burn the outlines and they don't listen to me, so release dates are really hard to set. I've published 20 books. They're all in the same world. The characters crisscross back and forth. Each series has its own particularly focus. I have a single mother who's just trying to raise her daughter. I have a little boy who just wants to chase dragons, because don't we all just want to chase dragons? What makes them Noblebright and not dark fantasy is that it's always going to turn out well somehow, some way. I don't know how it's going to turn out well, but somehow we end it in a good way. There's always hope. The world can always get better. The characters don't always make the world better. They can't always figure out how to do it, but it is possible. And when they do figure it out, they can make things better. But sometimes they just would like to chase dragons.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing in 11th book, actually.
I'm like, here we are. When you pick up these books, you're in for the long haul. Definitely. Andrew, I love your display with your books.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Welcome back. It's good to have you back on the channel.
Thank you, Katherine. So I'm Andrew D. Meredith, and I write epic fantasy. My main series is the Collation Saga, which is book 1 of 3 currently. I just finished Deathless Beast. If you can't read it. I just finished the first draft of book 4 of what will be 8 for that series, but not the last books of that world. So I'm on this panel because I write books that are adult fantasy that you can hand a 12-year-old without having to explain things that you didn't want to have to explain to them. So which makes it for an easy sell at like conventions and stuff, that you can hand it to a parent and a child and say, you can both read this, take it, go. no, just go. And so so that tends to lean towards the Noblebright setting versus something that's grim, and not every kid's going to want grim dark. Not to say that there aren't, but you can hand any one of my books to a kid and not have to explain anything. Yeah, and then I also have a Slavic fantasy series that is a man and kind of a lone wolf and cub story. Man and the boy on the road. Little boy has way too much magic, and the father's just trying to pursue a normal life for his adopted son.
Yeah. And so Thrice is the Spiffo 8 semifinalist, right? This self-published fantasy blog off. Yeah.
And that one has 2 books right now, and I just started the finale for that series.
Oh, yay. Yeah. We've all been waiting, so it'll be good. It's not like you're under any pressure. You write these great epic books, and they're so long, and we're like, no, we just want the next one now. Just keep churning it out.
It's good having 2 series too, and eventually more, because then I can go back and forth and not get too bored.
Yeah, so one of the purposes for our whole panel, and you just touched on that, Andrew, so I'm going to let you answer first, and then we can go no particular order, whoever wants to chip in, is defining what you believe Noblebright to really be. Noblebright is not one of those categories that right now is in the BISACs, meaning you can't go on Amazon, go to categories, and select it as a genre to publish under, but it is definitely a common subcategory under epic fantasy, as opposed to like dark. So what in your mind makes a piece Noblebright? Is it that ability, Andrew, like you were just saying, to just be read by children as well as their parents? Is there more to that?
It can be. I mean, the term was coined to be an antithesis to grimdark, but as people have then looked at it more, it's not sits on a spectrum. It sits on a zone of 2 different, of an XY axis of grim versus noble and bright versus dark, and what do those mean? And so, like bright versus dark would be like the not the tone, that would be grim versus noble, versus is it clean versus grim, versus bright and dark is how hopeful versus it's very easy to quickly say, well, it's about nihilism, and I know a lot of grimdark authors and reviewers will be like, it has nothing to do with nihilism, it has to do with it's much more existential than just saying nihilism, because you don't just say, nah, what's the point, and then that's the end of the first page. That would be pure nihilism. But when you're leaning towards, can we find the hope in the darkness? Even grimdark has hope elements to it.
They're not all grimdark. There's some grimdark that has absolutely no hope. To me, like it's George R. Martin versus Tolkien. Tolkien is Noblebright. George R. Martin is very much grimdark.
Yeah.
And it's whatever side you're closer to, and what distinguishes them isn't just the violence, because there's a lot of violence in Tolkien, but it's the type of violence, the way it goes about. Are they enjoying the violence?
Right.
You're more on the grim dark side, and is there hope in George R. Martin's books? There's generally no hope at all. You're just trying to make the best you can in the worst possible situation, and in Tolkien's world, like, there is hope. You can destroy the ring, as long as the fellowship holds true. Like, there's all sorts of, and that's where you get the found family and stuff. Grimdark doesn't usually have found family. You can have it, but it's really hard, because grimdark is usually your morally gray characters who are just out for themselves, and it's really hard to do found family with that when people are only out for themselves, and and there's no hope. The world can't get better. It's just you and your sword, and you're just hacking away, trying to carve yourself a little niche. So sorry to jump in, but that's how I've always kind of viewed it. I'm very much at the far end of Noblebright. There is definitely hope in my books.
Yeah. And so we got so many different people on the panel. Before we went live, we were talking about some of our authors on the panel have worked with trad publishing. I know somebody's worked in the book reselling aspect. We have library related here. So it's interesting just to get the different perspectives of what this looks like, especially within the industry. Claudia, Cyrus, Amina, do you have anything you'd like to add to what you think makes yours Noblebright?
So I definitely agree with that. It's about the content of hope. so I wrote my books, and then I started looking for what kind of category they fit into, because most of what I saw on Amazon and social media was dark fantasy, and I was just like, my book is not that. Like, story about this divine blessed savior coming down and saving people. That's not that. So that's kind of where my definition started forming, that it's about the hope in the series. So it's hope, but it's not just like, oh, the world is a merry place. It's specifically that experience of, in greatest darkness there can be hope. Different authors choose to write it in different ways. Some authors go through hope in the human experience. Mine is more hope that is not entirely human. Some of it is supernatural, but it is about the different varieties of hope, and particularly hope in the middle of heartbreak. So this is kind of like very very immediate for me, because right now my characters are going through a lot of heartbreak, but that whole experience of it, that it's heartbreak but it doesn't ruin everything, that there's grief but it doesn't ruin everything, and that there is hope for a happy ending, that it's not just the reader that's hoping for that, it's the characters who know and believe that. That's what makes it Noblebright. That's why like the name is also so appropriate, because it's bright, and then that's complemented by the character's nobility, that they have good intentions and they genuinely want to make the world a better place. Maybe they don't always do in every version of Noblebright Epic Fantasy, but they want to. And that, to me, is the great distinction, that there are these characters who want to be heroes and don't, at some point or another in their journey, they don't shy away from the call.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would say kind of my definition of Noblebright is where we don't have morally great characters, where the good guys stay good and the bad guys stay bad. So then there really is like this guy's bad, we have to defeat him because he's bad, and then the good guys don't sway over to the bad side ever.
I disagree with that, because you can do morally great characters in Noblebright, but they need to be on some kind of redemptive arc, or like leaning towards the hero side or attracted to the hero side. I've been experimenting with that in a recent whip. As I like you, I thought you couldn't do morally great characters in this, but I'm seeing that you can. You just have to take it. You have to flip it a different way than you would in a grimdark story. They need to learn to care about other people.
I definitely agree that it's possible. Like, I have one future book planned where the character goes from the evil person side, but then it's explained like how he did very evil things, but his heart wasn't evil, and then he becomes good. And I think it's possible, but that thing that like there is the aspiration toward nobility.
Yes,
that's very Noblebright thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like the men, maybe not the men, but like the people have honor, kind of like in the 1800s, people were like, I'm gonna duel you a punt because you injured my honor or something. That's like kind of like about that time period.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the whole like finding hope in the darkness definition, because like for the most part, like that's basically the entire theme and premise of my Fallen War Chronicles trilogy, is finding hope and love in the darkness of what's been going on around them. Like my series has like found family, forbidden romance, quite a few different tropes. Like there's always that. Like, even though there's horrible things going on around them, the characters, they don't see themselves as heroes, but at the same time, they're kind of forced into this position by unfortunate circumstances, and they have to like band together and do what they can to survive. And along the way, they learn to trust in one another and use their unique skills to kind of like survive and just bring hope back to the world.
Yeah, we got a great question in the chat. Does Noblebright always have to have a happy ending?
Yeah.
No.
Even if it's just happy for now, like for me, it
Right.
does.
Yeah. I mean, like
Here's the debate.
Star Wars is a good example. The original trilogy, right, is that it leans more noble than grim, and the second movie does not end well, right? But
he's in he's in an okay place at the end. I think that's what I mean. Like not happy, but like they're in a place of safe. Maybe things aren't great. But yeah.
I mean, I just finished the first draft of book 2 for Fallman War Chronicles, and the ending is basically like a double-edged sword because the heroes lose a major battle, but at the same time, at the end, they end up turning it around and finding a way to like make it more about the hope that they have for the future.
I was actually about to say, is it necessarily happy ending for the main character as much as happy ending for the story?
Right.
And then the main character may or may not have that happy ending.
So I personally think of it as happily ever after for the world and a qualified happily ever after for the characters. So by what I mean is that and this I think my readers found to be the case after they read my prequel, the prequel to my series, that the books, each individual book, may not have a happy ending. Like, I don't guarantee that. The individual books might have the absolute worst sorts of grief at the end of the book, but the series might have a happy ending. It's sort of like when I think of because Noblebright Epic Fantasy is about the growth journey and the aspiration toward nobility and overcoming darkness, the hope amid all of that. But part of that journey is the heartbreak that someone experiences along that path. I mean, it takes a lot of energy and courage and power and just so much and the resilience amid human suffering to overcome evil. And so that doesn't make for a sort of rose lens a happy ending. It just doesn't. So it's like I always think of that image of like at the end of the Lord of the Rings when Frodo's climbing onto the boat and the other hobbits are in tears at that point, and that is just my image of what a Noblebright happy ending looks like. And it's the kind of ending that I have in mind for my own series, that it is supposed to be heartbreaking. It will be happy, but it's like the happiness that comes after you've grown and suffered for it.
Well, I mean,
but that ending was the happiest ending Frodo could have. He suffered a wound that can never heal, not just to his physical body, but to his soul and his mind. Like, that was the best way that his ending could possibly end. So for me, that ending of the Lord of the Rings is a happy one because he's going to a place of peace where he can live out the rest of his day. He's not dying when he gets on the boat. He's going across to Valinor where he will live out the rest of his days with Bilbo and the other elves who went with them, and in a place where he can find some healing, some peace that is untouched by Sauron or any of the evil or anything. So it is a happy ending. Most people don't see it that way, but Tolkien meant that as a happy ending.
I should qualify. I see that as a happy ending. Yeah. So therefore, I agree with you, and I think
I'm sorry, I'm just a Tolkien nerd.
Same here.
And we've got this Noblebright require an emphasis on faith. And I think Amina, I know, has faith in your book to some degree. And Andrew,
I do too.
You have a very strong faith premise, especially with the Paladins. I don't know as much about the others if faith plays a role, but do you feel like it requires that emphasis on faith?
I wouldn't say it requires faith, but oftentimes I feel like a lot of writers kind of put it in there because it has such strong ties to the idea of and concept of hope. Like in my book, like not everyone is particularly like religious or spiritual, but at the same time, faith does play a huge part in some of the characters' lives. In fact, one of the main protagonists is a priestess that joins their party because of a horrible attack on her temple. And another one of the characters is, even though there's a priestess in the group, like she is actually debatably like the more faithful and pious member of the group, and like that was like her whole intention was to be like the one that leads the group in like their faith, whereas the priestess kind of more represents the concept of justice. Because
you don't need it, but you don't need faith.
You don't need it, but it does kind of provide a good like way to segue into that concept of hope.
I disagree with that, because you can still have hope without it. I have characters who are faithful, and I have characters who are who have no idea that there's any sort of God or anything that they could be believing in, and they still have hope. They have hope in each other, in their friends, in their family, for themselves, and in their world. So I think it can lend itself, but it doesn't have to be there. Yeah,
it's a tool that can be used towards hope.
Yeah,
in the same way that you can have.
Like I said, it's not required
setting as well.
You can still have hope without it.
I think it would be incredibly limiting to say that faith, as in like faith in religion, is the only way to have hope, because that would also, because then that kind of opens up the can of worms of which religion are you talking about. And I think
yes.
So like regardless of which religion, like mine is more of there is definitely Muslim inspiration in the faith in my stories, Muslim inspiration, not necessarily Christian, although you could find Christian influence, but it's Muslim. But you could have faith in epic fantasy from Hinduism or from Buddhism, like that. There are definitely legitimate believers in those faiths who find hope from them. So to say that it comes from faith, that I think is not. It's not there's definitely faith, but it's not the requirement that one could think it is. It's not a specific faith. It's more like something that like one of the commenters put: faith that the world is worth fighting for, faith that nobility is a real thing, faith in yourself, and faith that things can work out in the end. So if you have that, well, you could have a truly secular Noblebright story, and it still be as legitimately Noblebright as any one of us who has faith.
Yeah, I think really just to clarify,
you have to have faith in that you as a human have some agency to make things better.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise, you wouldn't do anything. You just sit around and be like, "All right, God, anytime now, fix the world."
I
please.
think there's two aspects of faith at play in Noblebright. So there's the tool. This character has a faith, and because of that, it drives their actions, no matter where that's based. And then there's faith, like Luna's saying here, faith that the world's worth fighting for. Faith that, I mean, honestly, what Noblebright character would ever go through what they're going through, usually at their sacrificing of themselves, even if they're not religious, if they didn't have faith that it was for something, unless you have the reluctant hero trope, in which case they're like, I really don't want to be here. But Claudia, how about you? How do you feel?
I think I didn't quite understand the question. Like, is he asking, like, do we have faith as in like there's a religious system in our book, or are we defining it as like just kind of like faith that we can fix the world is kind of like leading into the whole hope aspect?
Yeah, I think we've discussed the second one, so if you want to share if your characters have a faith in their world, then that's great. We can just go ahead and jump in there.
For my current series, they do not. I decided not to write a religion into the Erling Goose series. I did decide I got inspired with Brandon Sanderson. I've been kind of reading him this year. So I decided to create my own religion in my next series. The first book in that series has a spring 2024 release date, and it's called The Song of Siege and Shadows. Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant.
And Andrew, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier. You said that
I was just going to say that faith is like one paint on the palette that could be used, right? No matter what genre you're writing in, the same as magic, right? You can have plenty of grimdarks that have zero magic whatsoever. Well, why is it a fantasy then? Well, because it's a secondary world. So faith is just one color that can be added to the paint palette that you don't have to use. You can play with every other color and still have a fantasy, whether it's sitting wherever it's sitting. So whether you choose to use religion, organized religion specifically as a theme, as a paint, I want to say paint rather than theme, paint to move a theme forward is entirely up to the author. And a trope is a trope for a reason. So it is a trope to say that there of course there's religious themes. It's a fantasy. Not necessarily. It's just a matter of whether the author's using it or not. The nuance comes in how well you define that. Whether it feeds the theme or not, or whether it's just something you did in your world building. There's religion there, whether you talk about it or not, just for the simple fact that somebody believes something, whether it's that they say they believe nothing, or they believe in pantheism or monotheism, doesn't matter. It's still there, whether you mention it or not, because we can go for weeks, days at work and never mention, oh yeah, what was I doing on Sunday? Oh, I was at church. Well, we don't have to say that.
Right.
But yeah, if it's part of the story that we're telling.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I know, Andrew, you've got a very heavy faith focus because there's paladins, there's paladames, and for a couple threads. But then you also have a couple threads where the characters really aren't religious whatsoever. And you managed to do both of those really well. I
asked myself the question at the beginning, what happens if the gods are so present as a pantheon, you can't have an atheist? You can't have an atheist, so how do you have an atheist? And how do you play with all the interplays and try to build up, an arguments between characters where one of them says, well, I know there's gods, I just don't want them involved with me at all. So what does that create? What kind of tension does that create between characters who are still trying to figure things out versus those who seem to have everything in order but don't, versus those that do, no matter where they're sitting on that spectrum. Right.
Yeah, very similar in the Lord's Gambit series that I put out this year. I want to say last year. I'm ahead of myself. The lords and goddesses are physical, actual people. They walk around. You can't be like, oh, you don't exist, I don't like you. But you can say, no, you're not coming anywhere near me. You stay over there.
Yeah, I have them too. The gods walking around.
I have it to a certain degree because my main character is the person to whom faith is tied. I don't want to say religious leader because that's not it. But there is no organized religion as such. So it makes for this interesting balance that everyone knows that, of course, that's what he is. Like, you can see him, so therefore he's there. But you kind of have to believe in him, but how much do you believe in him? Do you believe in him that, like, yes, he will give you salvation, or do you believe in him that, yes, he has power, and I want to be protected, so I will go with the person who has power? And I think certain of my characters, it's an interesting mix of sometimes where they begin in their motivations, especially because it's not organized religion.
I mean, I do have organized religion, and it is against magic. So my main characters who have magic have a very adversarial relationship with the religion. But there's also the gods, the pagan gods wandering around, and most of them don't want you to believe in them. They're thousands of years old. They just want to have fun. They don't want you to petition them for things. They would there's a creator. You petition him. That's his job. I've been around a long time. I just want to have a good time.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit because I want to be respectful of everybody's time and just appreciate everybody tuning in and the great questions that you brought up that we haven't had on previous panels. So this has been great. Claudia, I'm going to let you start this one off and then we'll go sort of around the page again. But the theme of this year's Blitz is really about the indie community. And John mentioned earlier that it's nice to see the panels because you can see other authors that write this genre, which is exactly why I started doing this a few years ago, was because it takes a long time to write a book, at least for me. Not all of us can churn out like Melinda does every year. So
It took
you know,
years to get that way too. Like, look, I didn't start out turning out lots of books every
that's
year.
good to know. I'm
Just
like,
want to put that out there. It takes
man.
time and practice.
And I was like, well, you're not reading my book because it's not out yet. You can go over, if you liked my epic fantasy, and you can read Cyrus or Claudia or Andrew or Amina or Melinda, and really see and meet quality indie authors, which is something we talked about yesterday. So I'm curious to know, Claudia, I'm going to let you start. What going indie has meant to you, being a part of this community as a reader, as a writer?
That's a good question. I feel like it's meant freedom. It's given me freedom and a lot of hope. I spent 6 years trying to break into the traditionally published world and found out next to nothing because I just didn't know anybody in that industry. I wasn't able to go to a conference and find people in that industry. So when I found the indie author community, I started preparing one of my books in my backlist for publication immediately. And I just found so much freedom in the indie community. And then I realized, like, well, indies tend to get paid better than traditionally published authors, as far as I understand. So that's where I see time freedom in the indie author community. I see financial freedom in the indie author community. And then I also see hope. Like last year, I was just marketing my books on social media, and I did not see the income from doing just social media. And this year I saw hope because I was completing my trilogy. And I launched this book in August, and I tried a couple different platforms other than just being exclusive to Amazon. And it was an amazing wild ride getting the completion of this series, and it just gave me a lot of hope in like that I can make this my career. And I am a writer, and people do want to read my stories.
That's awesome. Oh my goodness. I have all the feels.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like the Noblebright ending right there. I'm like, okay.
It was.
And scene.
Yes, exactly what I was thinking.
Oh. So, yes, we're so glad that you found it. I think a lot of us found indie writing that way. It's tough. I mean, both are tough. It's not like going indie is easy, but especially like you said 6 years ago, self-publishing wasn't what it is today, and querying wasn't like what it is today. Not everybody had Query Tracker. You just go and upload your thing online, and you're printing out your manuscript and mailing off your blood, sweat, and tears. So, yeah, I'm so inspired that you transitioned from that, and here you are, and you got your series. And oh, have we lost Cyrus?
I'm still here. I'm trying to figure out what happened to my camera.
Oh, okay. Well, we got a cute little icon, so that works. Amina, do you want to go next?
So I think that indie publishing is the reason that I
There we go.
even decided to finish my books and try to publish them, since I mean, I wanted to be an author as a child. And one of the reasons I gave up on that dream, among many reasons, but one of them was the fact that I didn't think the series idea I had for this Muslim inspired, but not quite Muslim, but like very sort of otherworldly kind of faith-based fantasy could ever be published, because like being a Muslim and a woman of color, and then this story, like it and then also like the stuff that I see Muslim authors do publish are very like Muslim focused and not just inspired by that in a loose kind of way. So I didn't think I could ever be published. And it's actually the idea that there is such a thing as indie publishing that gave me the courage to go along that path. My first book isn't quite indie published, it's hybrid. So like that is something that I tend to note. But in essence, it still works the same way as indie publishing because I have all the rights and I manage everything. And everything afterwards has been indie published, and everything afterwards is going to be, because even though this path is so difficult, it is so difficult to market my books. It's it was sort of like very close to the end of the year that I finally broke my year's goal of 200 sales this year. It's not, yes, thank you. It's not easy to do, but it's still the path that allows me the freedom to write the story that I really need and want to write, publish that, and then hope to inspire people with the genuine nature of the things I really need and want to say. And yes, I've definitely had a community that's there to support me and helps me find an audience.
Yes. Thank you. I love hearing your story. Every time I hear how you got into this, I'm like heartwarming.
Thank you.
Cyrus, how about you? How did you really get into the indie community? How has the indie aspect been a part of your journey?
Well, as a librarian, I was already minutely aware of like the indie publishing community. And like when I started shopping around my book to agents at first, like I kept it in the back of my mind that, okay, so if the traditional path doesn't work out, at least I have this as another option. But like the more that I've kind of dived into like the indie community, the more I find that it's more enjoyable just because there's a lot of support here. Like I've made some pretty solid friends like in the indie writer community.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that we're able to like bounce ideas off each other, share in our successes and stuff like that, prop each other up whenever things don't go as well as we had hoped. I feel like compared to traditional publishing, I feel like the indie community is a lot more supportive and a lot tighter than big traditional publishing, just because we kind of have to be.
Yeah, the rising tide lifts all the boats, for sure. Andrew, how about you? You are so active in the indie community. I'm very interested for your answer on this.
I've become very active because it's so difficult to find the indie community in the first place. Whether it's algorithm keeping the indie community from being discovered,
Mm-hmm.
or that's just how the algorithm works, and so live with it. That's a grimdark view right there. But there's two difficult things you're heading into. Both indie publishing is separate from indie community until you can get them both going together, right? So like my wife and I's path was she was agented, we were both writers. She had been an editor for a publisher before, and we don't want to do all the work it's going to take to be indie. And then COVID happened, and we're like, we got time now. So we jumped in, but it still took 2 years before we really found anybody. There's always you can look on Amazon at the top 100, which doesn't always mean anything, and maybe find some people who will give you the time of day. But until you really kind of break into the greater community, then it's a flood. And if I am constantly striving to find a way for new authors to find the community before they even publish their first book, so that they can have that support ahead of time, not just for launching, but so that they can have somebody say, let's talk about that cover. It's not just a matter of, well, is this going to sell to the masses, which is a conversation as well, but is this book the best it can possibly be?
Yes.
If you walk in we all walk in with our preconceived notions. Oh, I don't need to hire an editor. So yeah, you do. And you need somebody there who you already consider a friend, who can give you the hard news of things that you need to work on.
Absolutely.
And you don't have that when you're on your own, because we are an island to start, until we realize that we didn't realize you're part of an archipelago. So
yes. Cat spotted. Yes. Cyrus brought the cat today. First cat of the Blitz. Woo!
No, more like the cat invited herself. She's like, what are you doing?
Live, I told everybody, I was like, go get your cat, your coffee, like Andrew had, whatever you need to get through the Blitz, because it is early in the morning here. Melinda, no pressure, but I'm going to let you finish us off with...
I'm going to depress you all, because my journey with indie publishing has been a grimdark George R.R. Martin novel. I think that's what pushed me to write such hope-filled books, because I was searching for hope for myself and for community. That's why I think my books have such an emphasis on found family. It has been a very lonely trek up a mountain. I still do not have much of a community. I have some really fantastic fans, but I've met with the absolute worst experiences in indie community, from fellow authors ripping your books apart publicly, trying to review bomb you. I've dealt with I've dealt with indie authors services community that takes advantage of you and takes your money and does not provide the services rendered. I've dealt with like the absolute, like, if someone were to make a movie about my the years that I've been indie publishing, which I started in 2016, it would be a very depressing movie full of
Sorry to hear
shyster.
that.
Yeah, I'm still looking for that community. I do not have people that I can say, hey, I don't have people that I can say, hey, I'm writing this thing, what do you think of it? I have nobody for that. I don't have people that I can show covers to. I'm very much still wandering in the darkness and the wilderness, and I am part of all the really large indie publishing groups. I've joined some masterminds, but there's still nobody that I can reach out to before I publish a book. I'm still very much on my own trying to figure it all out, and it's very depressing, and sometimes it's hard to push forward when you have nobody to ask about. I'm doing some really ambitious things this year. I have absolutely nobody to run any of this past. I am just putting the post in the big author groups and hoping somebody will even like give me some kind of advice, and that's not always the best way to do things. So would really love to find some authors that I can, that community. Like, I've not been able to find it. I don't know what it is, like, but for some reason the indie fantasy community doesn't like me very much. I don't know why.
Maybe you can
nice person.
Maybe you can start with the people who are on this panel.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, and most of us, we have connections. We can be like, come on, Melinda, here's a Discord you can join if you want, and things like that. I think I really wanted to thank you for sharing your experience and where you're at. I don't know about the others, but I have been there where it's so lonely and so isolating, like Andrew said, just trying to find it. And I would bounce in and out of groups and be like, is this my group? Is this my group? Is this my group? It's so hard to find because I'd feel awkward, and it doesn't help that I'm an introvert. And I'm like,
me too.
I either overshare or undershare, not connected enough, too connected. But
I would also say there's also 3 different kind of broad groups that are all called indie, right? There's like the con only table self-publishers. There's the publishers, those who are publishing indie from pre-COVID, and then there's a whole new generation. Actually, generations. It's almost every year is a group, different type of style.
Pre-COVID,
right? So, but we all have something to learn from each other. Like the pre-COVID 20 to 50K group is a very different group of indie versus self-published romance is an entirely different group on top of that. and we all work differently in how we support each other or don't. And we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And if we're able to acknowledge that and realize what we can learn from each other together, as opposed to just, well, I've been around, I've been self-publishing since 1996. It's like, okay, cool. What's changed? Oh, I haven't. Okay, what's changed? We have ebooks now. We didn't have that 12 years ago was the big flux of that. And now we're in the audiobook craze. And who knows what's coming next.
That's true. But that's also why I started doing the author interviews on my podcast, was to try and meet more authors, try and find some kind of community, make some author friends. Hasn't quite worked out that way, but
we can get you some recommendations going, Melinda.
It's definitely just really difficult. Like for me, this is getting a community. I don't have a very big community, but I have people like I can ask like, so what about this particular question in this particular book? But this is all by chance. Like I didn't know where to go looking when I had my first book already published. So it's by chance that I found people who were like, yeah, I'm willing to talk to you. I'm willing to cross promote your books. Let's have a conversation. If you have a question, please ask me. That it's, I mean, I have just a little enough experience what you're saying, Melinda, to say that if you happen to find it, you're very lucky. And those of us who do our best, like Katherine, like Andrew, who make an effort to include other people, they are like the gems and the stars. Because
And eventually you'll find someone who will put up with your social awkwardness if you're like me. And be like, it's okay.
You're not socially awkward though. When I talk with you, like you seem totally normal to me.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind.
Maybe we're just socially awkward in the same ways, and that's why I don't see it.
But this is
We're getting real and raw on this panel, you guys.
This is the power of this screen. Like I'm not always very smooth in person, but the screen, like, it allows me to pretend that I'm extroverted and socially competent.
But I think that's a good point about
I think I've worked in customer service so long that I've gotten good at pretending like I'm not socially awkward in public. But as soon as I get behind closed doors, like, then the dork comes out.
Yeah.
And then everyone's just like, why are there like two different people standing here in one body?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're all the authors, so I assume we've all played an RPG. And so
I have not.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
Putting on an author persona is a great way to, like, my wife's an absolute introvert, but she puts on her 1800s costume for her 1800s mysteries that she writes, and suddenly she's author Patricia. And that's a very different Patricia than the one at home. And so she's more confident because she's put on that cosplay, if you will. And how many cosplayers are introverts? Most of them. How many authors are introverts? Most of them. And if you put on putting on a persona, it's still you, but it's just a different version of you, can be such an advantage.
This is definitely my experience.
Writer's block is when your imaginary friends stop talking to you.
I never have that problem. I wish they would stop talking sometimes.
Like, this explains that slump I had a few weeks ago. Oh my God, Bosco stopped talking to me. What do I do?
Well, this has been great. This has all been great. Melinda, we'll definitely try to get you connected with some of the groups we know about, because you want to be able to go that deeper level beyond just your screen face, like Amina said. You know, it's got to be, there's a few people that I've been very blessed to meet, like C.H. Smith is saying here, he met somebody through a giveaway that became a friend, and then it just sort of spirals. There's a couple people that went through the fire with me on the box set who I can message and be like, this sucks. I don't feel like writing right now. I'm wondering if I should be a writer anymore at all. And they're like, calm down, go get a drink, come back tomorrow, you'll feel better.
Yeah, I would love to have somebody like that.
You don't show on your screen face. So that's really what you're looking for, is
somebody that's not like.
But thank you all so much. If you're watching, and if you're watching and you're in the same boat, feel free to drop what you write in the comments, because it's possible that there might be other people watching right now who are also looking for a community, who are thinking about starting an indie journey, or they've been in an indie journey for a long time. Mm-hmm. So you can just drop on the comments for the video, hey, my name is this, I write this, looking for a community, and maybe people will post recommendations and you can get connected that way. If you're watching the replay, the comments will be left up as well. But thank you all so much for joining, for being so open and talking about books and fantasy and everything for the Blitz. This has been awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. So everybody watching, we got a lot of people on. These videos are continuing all weekend long. There are over 100 authors in this year's Blitz. We started this we did a couple yesterday. And we've got them all day today. We've got them all day tomorrow. We've got them all day Monday. So subscribe and like to catch the other panels. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.